Yes, thanks for that introduction, and I try to keep it all very brief and come quickly to the tools themselves on the online presentation. But before that, I think it's good to have a little introduction to see the intention of the tools. And after each online presentation, we come to question and answers part. So to be very fast, we have these, in general, these two tools in iBRoad, which were developed. So on the one hand, it's the iBRoad plan, which is a renovation roadmap. And on the other hand, we have the iBRoad Logbook. They both can be interconnected, but they don't have to. They can stand alone as well. So first, we only deal with the iBRoad plan. So what is the idea behind it? So maybe, of course, the first thing is that we have ambitious climate targets, and they are hard to reach as building components have really long lifespans. So, for example, outer walls last for 50 years or 60 years. Secondly, we see in the market that most renovations only happen stepwise. So building owners usually renovate one building component only if it has to be renovated, and that's the natural point. Still, these stepwise renovations have to lead to a carbon-neutral building stock in the end. The third point is that you have to have an overarching plan to combine these single steps to one deep renovation. And that's what we're aiming for. So if you think of all these linkages between maybe the window and the insulation, or this necessary roof overhang, if you like to insulate the wall, these are things that have to be planned ahead in order to avoid mistakes. And the fourth, but it's a really important point, is that you have to consider people's lives if you make such a plan. So the inhabitants, the owners, they have to want this plan. It has to fit with their life. And of course, this is an individual part. Everybody needs something else, and this is the I in iBRoad. So after all, what is this roadmap? It's a diagnosis tool, it's an energy audit, and it's an individual stepwise renovation plan for building owners. The main features, you can say, are a long-term renovation strategy. It's developed individually together with the owner, and it contains targeted measures from the beginning that finally lead to a deep renovation. So here's an overview of what the pages of the roadmap are. So you have one page showing the current building state, the actual energy consumption, and you might compare this to the EPC. These are generally the same data as in the EPC. You have a roadmap overview where you see certain renovation steps. You have a detailed roadmap showing the steps as well, but with more detailed information. And on the very right, you see detailed information for each single renovation step. So what to be aware of and what to do in what time. One thing is very important for the understanding of the tools when we go to the tool soon. So this is distinguishing measures from steps. So renovation measures, you can say, only refer to one single building component. That might be the facade or the roof or the boiler. So these are all renovation measures if you insulate the facade, for example. A renovation step means a construction period. And in this period, you might combine certain measures, more than one. For instance, you can put together in one step insulation of the wall together with exchanging the windows, which fits perfectly because you can have this link between the two. And maybe also you put into this one step a new heating boiler. So this means a step. And the number of steps is something you fix together with the owner, and it's always individual. this is important to be remembered when we come to the tools soon. So for more information, Alexander already mentioned, we have the iBRoad-project.eu webpage, and we also have the YouTube channel. So there is a lot more information. And now we come to that tool. You will see the tool called Roadmap Assistant. And this assistant is like a printing device. So this is a formula where you enter the data, usually the energy auditor does. You enter the data that is put and shown in the roadmap afterwards. So this is really like a printing device. And we get to this online right now. So you see, I have already some renovation roadmaps in my roadmap assistant. But if there's nothing, you always see this button, Create New Roadmap. And this is what we can do. We can call this however we like and create a new roadmap. And first thing we are asked is general building facts. So the address, building facts, so number of residential units, so very general building data that's always used. And this is usually, you can say, same data as in the EPC. Of course, you can simply add building images. And if you go deeper, you can also give advice for the user influence. So, of course, the user influences the energy consumption with his behavior. And here is where you can say what kind of user is this? Does he need more energy maybe? Or what are the habits? So I don't fill this in now because this would take too long time. Of course, like TV cooks always do, I have something prepared. And can show you what this looks like. So what we just saw was this page, so the general building data. And here we see there are already some images. And year of construction is filled in. And you also see there are some data concerning the user influence. At the same time, we have some advices for efficient use of the building. So if the auditor sees there are some specific habits of the owners that he likes to address, he can enter them down here. And the auditor does not have to invent always new texts. There is a number of text blocks that you can see when you click here. And these are typical advices you could give as an auditor. And you simply click on one and it's copied down into the text. So we try to make it as convenient as possible for the auditors to fill in this tool. So first page was this edit building page. What we see here is the central navigation page of the Roadmap Assistant. From here, you can navigate to the general data, to the current building state. Later on, we can create the roadmap from here. You also see there are renovation steps containing renovation measures, as you remember. But we start first, of course, with the current building state. This is always starting point. And we click on that and see. I have to click that warning. It always appears in this part. Here we can really give the energy data for the building and enter the energy sources. If there's more than one, we can add all of them. And for each source, we add the energy demand and the energy cost. So it's always one row for one energy source. Also, auxiliary energy is there, carbon emissions, the overall primary energy demand and the cost. It's very important, this tool does not calculate. The energy auditor really has to enter this data, and on top, he can also enter the energy class, if there is one in this member state. And this energy class has to be the same as in the EPC. So to avoid to confuse the homeowners. So this is the current energy state of the building. Once we enter the data, we say, save this. And now we have the current state, and we have to enter the renovation steps. You see, there are already 3 steps in here, and I have another button saying create new step. If I click that, sorry for these warnings. And you see, for each step, there are generally the same data as in the current building state. So energy source, demand, and cost, again in rows, and primary energy demand. And if there are incentives available, they can be entered here. And something new appears. These are additional benefits of the renovations. So, of course, renovations don't only save energy, they also improve maybe the building aesthetics or living health, security, or thermal comfort. And you can activate these simply by writing into this field. And this you will then see that this icon will be taken into the roadmap. So we don't create it right now because we have, of course, prepared steps here. This is what it looks like if data is in there, and here we see you can write free text into these fields and see they will be overtaken. And of course, once we have this step, we need the measures. Go back to this overview and see. Here we can edit the renovation measures that are contained in step 1. And we see there are already 2 measures foreseen for step 1. So changing the heating system and insulating the cellar ceiling. Here we have a button to create a new measure. And once we create a new measure, we have to first go through a system of filter questions. So level 1 asks us, is it a measure that refers to the envelope or to the heating, ventilation, or cooling system? So, for example, we say it's the envelope. Then level 1 pops off and asks us, okay, it's envelope, so what is it? Is it the external wall or the roof? So maybe say it's about the roof. The next filter question only sees roof insulation or something else. Okay, we say roof insulation. And level 3 in this case is empty. And after this cascade of filters, we see there are nodes, and we have a drop down for nodes. So the nodes always say, if you if you do the roof, in this case, first, and later on, you will insulate the outer wall, or you will change the heating boiler, the radiators, the ventilation system, then there are certain advices to beware. So, for example, if you say we want an advice for the roof and in relation to the outer wall, we click this and we get a standard text block that is prepared saying if the roof is insulated, it must be taken into account in a later outside wall insulation. So look ahead, because you have a plan, you know, first I do the roof, later I will do the wall insulations. I have to look for the roof overhang. It has to be large enough to take on this wall insulation later. And this is the kind of thinking. We make a plan from the beginning and we avoid mistakes that might occur later. Again, you can describe the improvement that is meant here. So in this case, it would be insulating the roof with insulation layers, maybe of a certain material. This could be written here. And the technical details might see the new U value of this, or maybe certain layers that are needed. So here you can describe the measure, and I will show, of course, again in a prepared measure, what this looks like. So this is the measure heating and ventilation, exchanging the heating system. And we can say, okay, what do we note? What is very important in this step to beware of? What is the improvement? What do we do in this measure at all? And maybe what are technical details? If there are incentives only for this measure, we can give the details here. And of course, the renovation cost and the included costs for maintenance. So what would we have to pay anyway? It's not just for the energy improvement, but the boiler would have to be changed anyway. And these costs are shown here. Having entered the data, we click on update measure, and we see it's in here. And we can add as many measures as we like to this step. And this is the way how we can add measures to renovation steps. And by this, we can really build up this roadmap step by step and filling the steps with certain renovation measures. Of course, the plan itself, the work of the auditor, has to be done before issuing this roadmap. So, say we have filled in the roadmap and say, okay, this is the plan for the owner. Maybe have a talk to the owner before we issue the roadmap finally. Then we can say, okay, I want to create this roadmap and finalize it. This we do with Show Roadmap Preview. This opens a whole new page in the browser and shows you an overview of the roadmap. And this already is part of the roadmap. You could copy this link and send it over to the customer, to the building owner, and he would have his roadmap in an online version. It's also possible to print the roadmap to PDF, and from there print it on paper maybe. But let's stay on the online version first. Here you see one link to the renovation roadmap, and you see everything that was entered before. So the building today, renovation step 1, containing the heating boiler and the cellar ceiling, the costs and the energy costs. And you see how the energy classes improve step by step. Back to that, we can also choose the detailed roadmap for the more technically interested homeowners. And we see all the information about the energy consumption, energy bill, carbon emissions, and also the costs. And down here, we also see the additional benefits only as icons in this overview. And if we dive deeper, we see the details of the current building state, the photos that we uploaded, the general building data, and this what we entered for the owner's behavior. And we see, in this case, 3 renovation steps. And if we click these, we see the detailed description of the renovation step. Here again, we see it's step 1 containing 2 measures. And measure 1 is removing the boiler as we entered it into the assistant. We see the note that we wanted to give, the prices, and on this side, energy consumption again as an overview. And if we go down here, we don't just see the icons, but also the explanation of the additional benefits.